the geolocation on your phone is going to give away the location of the video, especially if you upload it to a public service. Another consideration is the entrances and exits of a property. We don't want to have a lot of video footage of the key terrain and the entrance and exits of the property, because if somebody can see it from the street and they start go looking for what you got, they're going to see the entrance and they're going to recognize that entrance. So that excludes fencing, that excludes other types of kind of identifiers like the address of the property. And by the way, I see YouTubers making these mistakes all the time. It's hard to have something stealth or hidden or kind of out of the way if you're constantly showing pictures of it. Now, in the case of some of the properties that I work with, they're in the business of having guests. So they're bed and breakfasts, they're permaculture design centers or training facilities. And so sometimes they don't mind if there are distinct indicators of the location, but I still try to, for example, not have any minors in the pictures, not have any people who, people's faces, so people who may not have given me explicit permission to video. I also try not to have any key features, so we only film the public areas instead of, behind the scenes type of stuff. Also, you don't film the outside of buildings, even if you're going to film the inside. So for example, if we're doing a demonstration in somebody's workshop and their workshop has a bunch of tools, we're going to set up the work area so that we're only showing the tools that are relevant to the viewer, and we're not going to flash by and see all the other tools that they have. See, you don't want somebody to be able to build a profile of what's there or to be distracted by the things that are not relevant to the video itself. Another aspect is aerials. I see all the time people posting on Reddit an aerial of their property that includes one or more highway. If you can see a highway intersection, then we can find exactly where your property is. Easy, very easy. Now again, you don't have to be paranoid somebody's gonna come out and steal your stuff, but if there is an event where somebody wants, maybe a local law enforcement is looking for an opportunity and they got something mixed up and they get a lot of information about your property, safety inspectors or animal, like USDA sees videos about how you're raising animals and they decide to come visit your property, you don't want to make it easy for them to find. You also don't want the specifics of a terrain on your video. So here I'm showing you the trails. Most of these are native trails in a sense. They're kind of woodland, the characteristics of the woods, by the way, you can use from satellite to see exactly where I'm located. But ultimately, I tend to focus on aspects of the generic. So if I'm giving you a specific example, I'm giving you aspects, I'm giving you shots that are generic. So that tree with an arrow on it, I used it in a video yesterday when we're talking about trail markings. That's the tree with an arrow on it. You're not going to find that specifically on a satellite. You'd have to be at this location to know where it exists. But if I show you the tree with an arrow on it, and then I turn to my left and show you a web camera or a trail camera, now you know the location of the web camera, and you know the location of the tree, and you might see another marking on a tree here, and now you can triangulate the exact location of all this so that you can get to this property. You can also, everything we're doing, you're going to see the aerials. So look, you didn't get a chance to get down this side here, but you're going to see the aerials by satellite eventually, and the trees we leave are going to be markers for the location. Now again, if you're seriously going to have a stealth property, and I see a lot of videos talking about, build your stealth hunting cabin, you really got to be more careful about the video itself, or just not share any videos. Now again, if I'm on a customer's property or client's property, I don't want to differentiate between a property I own and a property a customer owns, and I certainly don't want to use the customer's name, because we want to maintain some privacy for the client, so client confidentiality. There's a channel that talks about bunkers, and they have video about a bunker that's accessible through a duck blind. Well, if you can get the general location, you look for a duck blind, now you know where the bunker is. So now why am I even talking about this? First off, my grandfather was a cartographer. He was actually in the Korean War, and he would look at aerial pictures. So he'd talk about this every so often. And ultimately, it kind of stuck. You can look at a satellite image and you can tell where the historical roads are. You can tell where there's different types of activity on the land. And all this pattern matching stuff we talk about gives you an idea of where things are. So even the fact that we've got a three-way intersection at a tree can tell you pretty much where I am. Privacy is dead in America. Now what do we do about this? First off, when we're doing videos, when we're showing people the property, we just want to kind of scrub out anything that's going to be an obvious indicator of where you're located. License plates, entrances and exits, unique features of the land. In doing this, we're going to be able to isolate, make it more difficult for somebody to look for the property. Now, if somebody really wants to find your property, or they're in law enforcement, they will find your property easily, because it's kind of hard to hide anything on the planet these days. If you're in a situation where you're worried about law enforcement finding your house, you got a whole different problems. You shouldn't be taking videos in the first place. There's another thing that leaks, it's interesting, is that Garmin devices can do this Garmin Connect, and then Garmin Connect can upload your trail to a satellite, and then people who go use the Garmin map can see where your trails are. Now in my case here, we've got hunting trails, and I tend to go over the same trails over and over in the video, but we've got trails for hunting, family recreational use, and camping. So these trails look pretty much look the same, except where we've done the markers. I don't want people to know where they are, because they might come out here and hunt. Now, fortunately and unfortunately, all we've seen is a couple does, and they're scrawny looking themselves. I put my best deer pictures online, and they're still not very good. I haven't seen any bucks out here. When it comes time for scratching, I don't see much scratch out here. But ultimately, what we're doing here is we're creating content relevant to the need, but we're removing everything that can compromise the location. So I don't know if this video is appropriate for everybody on here, but I know a lot of you folks are posting on Reddit and saying, hey, what should I do with my property? And I look at the picture, I smack my hand on my head, and I think, you just gave away your address. Would you post your personal information online on purpose? No. So stop doing it by accident, and be mindful that your photographs in your smartphone are geotagged. Your videos of entrances and exits and roads and satellite images with streets on it all compromise your location, and ultimately could put your family at risk. Could put all the hard work you've done at risk. And believe me, there's a couple examples already. There's a guy who built an off-grid cabin, beautiful off-grid cabin. Somebody in the zoning figured out that he had this off-grid cabin in their district and kind of needed something to do, so they went out and stopped the build and basically are making him tear down his off-grid cabin. They don't retroactively say, oh, by the way, you made a mistake, fill out this paperwork, pay a fine, you can keep the cabin. Sometimes these people get a personal satisfaction out of wrecking your dreams. So again, fewer videos, give away less information. Every time you include the face of a person, the person's face can be found in different types of facial search engines. Online is not as exciting as people think it is when you understand some basic privacy. So I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you're going to build a small farm, homestead, or estate, and you're concerned about security, then I can definitely go into detail about things for your site. I can show you how to make a defensible location, and how to ultimately protect it against both natural disaster and man-made disaster. I can also show you how to surveil and monitor your property so that you can maintain security and make it difficult for someone to steal equipment. For example, farm equipment gets stolen all the time. If I had goats and hogs out here, I would give you close-ups, because a goat or a hog can be worth 500 bucks, can be worth 400 bucks. you don't, it's on 4 legs too. All you gotta do is shake a little bucket and it'll follow you right into the truck, or into a trailer. Don't put a hog in your truck, because that'll probably not work out very well. Anyway, if you're understanding what I'm talking about here, people are giving away too much information. They're putting their family at risk. Should we have a significant, we're already in a significant economic distress situation. Should we have an even more difficult situation? If someone's going to poach a deer, they'll poach a goat. And ultimately, it's about feeding your family. It's about protecting your interests. It's about ultimately having that prosperity stay with you. And it's done by not putting a whole bunch of pictures online. Again, it's difficult. I'm in the business of teaching and marketing, and I can only video what I've got. But it's another reason I have hundreds of gigs of video, because some of the videos would identify a location, and so it's better to wait a couple years before I publish that information. It doesn't have to be real time. I'm not in any hurry to put videos out. So again, when I'm working on client sites, this is especially important, because the clients, I want to maintain their privacy. When I'm working on larger projects where somebody has said, we want to keep this quiet, this is our oasis, we don't want poachers, we don't want trespassers. You know, I open all these woods up. It's easy for somebody to come back here on a 4-wheeler. In fact, I've got relationship with neighbors to make sure that if they see anybody doing that, they'll call them out, but ultimately they have permission to access the property for hiking. And so we even set up boundaries on that. So if that's something you want to talk about in the future, let me know. But I'm Justin Hitt, Prosperity Homestead. If you've got specific questions, especially if there's a confidential question, or you're interested in paid consulting or land management, planning, or design, then visit www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page and ask your questions. I'll see you in the next video.